On this planet, there exists a constellation. A constellation that protects you, safeguards your home, and feeds your family. It is known as the Orion constellation. You can see this constellation almost everywhere on Earth, regardless of the time of year or whether it is day or night. But you won't find this constellation on any star chart or in any astrologer's book, because this constellation has nothing to do with the cosmos. I just really wanted to use that stock footage of stars and do a cool voiceover for the intro. Yeah. The Orion constellation is a real thing, and I'll get back to that in a moment, but this video is about currency. So what is currency? First and foremost, it's a unit of exchange. That just means that you use it to get other stuff. Otherwise, you'd be using chickens and, I don't know, wood. It's portable, so unlike chickens or wood, you can put a lot of it in your pockets or wallet or bra or whatever. And it's durable, so it's unlikely to get damaged and lose value while it's in your pockets or wallet or bra. It also has to be divisible so that you can pay exactly what's owed without rounding up and overpaying. First of probably many side notes, in order to be divisible, they come in different denominations, the same word that's used for churches, and while people do worship the stuff, that's pretty much where the similarities end. In both the euro and the dollar, there are 7 paper notes. The euro calls them banknotes, and they are the 5, 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, and 500. The dollar calls them Federal Reserve notes, and there is the 1, 2. That's right, the 2. It's not some special collector's item like your grandma thinks. They make new ones all the time. 5, 10, 20, 50, and 100. That's it. There's nothing higher than that anymore. We used to have a $100,000 bill that was discontinued in 1934, and it was only ever used to transfer money between banks. Because back in the day, the only way to move large amounts of money between banks was to put it in a safe on the back of a horse and good luck. When it comes to coins, the euro has 8. The 2 euro, 1 euro, 50 cent, 20 cent, 10 cent, 5 cent, 2 cent, and 1 cent. Many countries either have or will soon phase out their 1 and 2 cent because, well, I'll get to that later. The dollar has the dollar coin, half dollar, quarter, dime, nickel, and penny, the bane of many a YouTuber. The American penny is made of copper-covered zinc, which means that if you melted it down and sold the metals, you would make 1.5 cents. The euros 1, 2, and 5 cent are all copper-covered steel, and depending on the country, costs around 5.5 cents to make, which is why many countries either have or are trying to ditch the 1 and 2 cent and just keep the 5 cent. The American nickel isn't doing much better and currently costs 6.3 cents to make. So when it comes to the lower denominations in almost every currency, they cost more to make than they have in value. Which brings us to the last definition of currency, and one which will make a lot of economists angry at me for saying. It's a store of value. The reason that will make economists angry is because they will say that money is a store of value, while currency is just a representation of value. I'll get to why I personally disagree with that distinction later, but back in the day, our money, if it wasn't just flat out made of gold and silver, had a real value of gold and silver attached to it. In the United States, we started off on the silver standard, with the dollar being defined as 24.056 grams of silver. In 1900, we switched to the gold standard, redefining the dollar as 1.505 grams of gold. You could walk into a bank and get that equal amount of gold in exchange. It even said so on the dollar. But that really kind of holds a currency back. You're not going to have many more dollars in circulation unless you invade somewhere or find a whole bunch of new gold. So combined with the fact that many European countries had already done so, in 1971 the United States abandoned the gold standard and allowed the dollar to become a free-floating fiat currency, which just means that its value is backed by the government and nothing else. So how much is a dollar worth? It's not worth anything. It's just worth $1. It's worth slightly more than a bag of Skittles and like 1/3 of a gallon of gas. It's not pegged to anything like gold or silver. You can still go out and buy gold and silver with your money or currency, which don't, but I'll get to why I think that later. Since its value is backed by the government, it's also protected by the government. In order to protect that value, you must protect against counterfeit. Now, I'm not going to go through every single anti-counterfeiting measure like the little strip or the watermark or whatever, because everyone knows about those and they're boring. You don't come here because you want to be told old stuff, you want to know new stuff. So let's talk about some that you probably don't know. Here's a favorite among people who love to ruin movies. What's wrong with this scene? Absolutely nothing. There is nothing wrong with this scene. I don't know where this rumor came about that money burns some different color, but it doesn't. Defacing or destroying US currency is illegal, and since I'd rather get in trouble for copyright than for burning money, here's someone else's video where they burn money. See, it burns the normal fire color. There's nothing special about it. It's made of cotton and linen. It isn't even actually paper. But again, it's illegal for anyone to counterfeit money, even in the movies. So whenever you see money in a movie, it's real. It has to be, by law. I mean, they're not gonna burn money, but whenever you see it in a briefcase or whatever, that's real money, at least the top layer anyway. That blew my mind when I found that out. But here's another one. In my intro, you saw me put $1 in my scanner. You shouldn't do that, or anything else in my intros, but on top of that, you can't do it. Your scanner or copy machine simply won't do it because of the Orion constellation. It was introduced in 1996 and it's on almost every single paper currency. Where is it on the 20? Oh, it's all the zeros from the random 20s that are scattered all over the place. Here it is on the pound and the euro. And you probably never even noticed it. The moment your scanner or copy machine detects the constellation, it'll stop. That's actually legally required to be hardwired into the machine. It simply won't do it. How cool is that? So now let's talk about how different currencies work together. I know you just rolled your eyes. I promise it's not as complicated as you think or as certain people want you to believe. To start off, let's use a made-up currency, and let's call it ferret. You want to go on vacation to some lame developing country, and once you get there, you have to convert your money into the local currency, the turtle. Right now, one ferret is worth, I don't know, 360 turtles. It's like pesos, okay? It's a really low value currency. But now that you have brought more value into the country, each individual turtle is worth more. So the next person who wants to come and visit will trade their one ferret for 357 turtles. Then someone from here goes back and it costs 355 turtles for one ferret, which devalues the turtle against the ferret. So for the next person, it takes 356, etc., etc. But this is what those financial experts on TV mean when they say that the dollar has lost value against the euro today. They mean that value has been transferred between the two currencies, making one more valuable or stronger than the other. Which is why it's possible to lose value against one currency, but gain value against another. But what do they mean when they say that China is a currency manipulator? Well, now let's take a look at the real world. As you should know, the United States has a trade deficit with China, which means that we send money to China in exchange for goods and services, but get very little back. So we are introducing more value into China. Remember what happened when we exchanged a ferret for a turtle? The value of the turtle went up against the ferret. So the value of the yuan should go up with each transaction, but it doesn't. China keeps the value of their currency artificially low in order to encourage more trade with China. China. I'm sorry, I don't know what it is about the way he says it, but that's just funny. Actually, I'm not sorry, I don't take any of that back. Anyway, this could all be avoided if we just had some sort of universal currency, right? There'd be no exchange rates or confusion anymore. It would be pretty simple. There's no catch here, I actually do kind of mean that. Prime example is the euro. The euro is the universal currency of an entire continent. Well, most of it. When I was a kid, there were francs, Deutschmarks, francs again, kroners. There were a lot of currencies is what I'm saying, but they were all standardized and converted to the euro in 2002. That is the best practical example of universal currency that we have today. And by 2023, the entire African continent is set to adopt their own universal currency called the Afro. I really wish I was making that up. What a horrible name for a currency. What's next, the Amero? I was kind of kidding. But that one's pretty unlikely because people love themselves some dollars. Many countries around the world, instead of pegging their currency's value to gold or silver, peg it to the dollar or the euro or other top shelf currencies because they're relatively stable. But what about those electronic universal currencies like Bitcoin? How do those work? Just like every other currency, whenever you buy Bitcoins, you are increasing the value of all other Bitcoins. When Bitcoin first started in 2009, it was basically worthless. In March 2010, someone tried to sell 10,000 Bitcoins for $50 and no one bought it. A month later, one Bitcoin was valued at $0.003. That's a third of a penny. Today, each Bitcoin is worth $2,669, which means if you could go back in time and buy that guy's 10,000 Bitcoins for $50, you'd now be sitting on well over $26 million. The only real difference between Bitcoin and other currencies is that it only exists digitally and not physically. It's worth noting that the vast majority of real currencies like the dollar and the euro also only exist digitally, but that's a different story for a different time. You can't go to a bank and get Bitcoin banknotes. It only exists in the ether. So how does it work? First, you need what they call a wallet. Again, it only exists electronically, so it's basically just a fancy online bank account. Then you have to buy Bitcoin from someone else. You are exchanging your dollars for Bitcoins, just like any other currency. So now they can take your dollars and spend them wherever they want, whereas you can only use your Bitcoins at shady online stores and for various dark web services. At least for now. Every time there's a Bitcoin transaction, you are announcing to the secure Bitcoin network all the information regarding that trade, which is then kept on several decentralized ledgers which are combined to make the main ledger. I know that sounds complicated, but it's really not. There is no central authority like a government or a bank. The people who keep these online ledgers or blockchains are just other Bitcoin users known as miners. Every time a miner's ledger is added to the main ledger, that user is rewarded with 12.5 Bitcoins. So a lot of money, which is why people volunteer their computing power in order to try and mine Bitcoins. I wouldn't bother though, because the amount of computing power required to work the cryptography is more than most of us can afford. The cryptography is hella complicated, and while I did take some crypto classes because I thought that's what I wanted to do in the army,
I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain.
Anyway, every time several 100,000 ledgers are added to the main ledger, the reward gets cut in half. It started at 50 Bitcoins, and it's projected that the last whole Bitcoin will be mined in the year 2140. And there is a fixed amount of Bitcoins in existence, unlike other currencies. But just like other fiat currencies, Bitcoin only has value because people think it has value. If people didn't want to accept Bitcoins anymore, or nobody wanted to exchange their other currencies for Bitcoins, they would essentially become worthless. Or since there's no physical Bitcoins, if a solar flare were to happen which wiped out all electronics, or the zombie apocalypse were to happen. In that case though, dollars and euros would probably become pretty worthless too. What would the currency be if society collapsed? Many people might say gold or silver, because unlike all those fake fiat currencies, gold and silver is real money with real intrinsic value. Is it though? And does it? Aside from some very recent electronic and spaceflight applications, gold and silver is pretty intrinsically worthless. For well over 99% of human history, gold and silver was only valuable for jewelry because it was shiny. It's only valuable because it's nice to look at and people think it's valuable. Just like any other currency, really. But that won't stop people from fear-mongering you into thinking that the dollar will collapse at any moment and that you should invest in gold and silver by buying it from them. But they won't actually send you the gold or silver because that would be crazy expensive and insurance blah blah. No, instead they'll send you a certificate saying that they're holding onto some gold in your name. Definitely nothing shady about that. I'm sure that certificate will come in real handy when the bombs fall. Just like bottle caps. Oh, okay, we probably all saw this coming, so go on. You know what my main problem with bottle caps is? Bottle caps aren't rare enough to be a currency, and they're way too easy to counterfeit. One of the missions in New Vegas is to go shut down a bottling facility which is being used to counterfeit bottle caps. But is it really counterfeiting if they're also real bottle caps? Not only that, but bottle caps weigh 2.2 grams a piece, and there are some items in the game that cost 20,000 bottle caps. Do you know how much that weighs? I do, because I did the math. 97 pounds. Oh yeah, sure, could you just head down to the grocery store for me real quick? Off you pop. Not only that, but old school pre-war money still exists in the game and it still has value. Why use bottle caps? Okay, I'm done. Okay, so really though, what would the currency be if everything fell apart? If we're being honest about it, bullets, food, and knowledge. Take a look at The Walking Dead. Or don't, because it's getting kind of old and I'm just gonna tell you about it anyway. They don't use money, they trade in actual goods and services. Smart people are valued, guns and bullets, food. Basically, the ability to work is the main currency. When you boil it down, The Walking Dead is pure communism. Everyone keeps working in order to benefit themselves and their group as a whole, and whenever someone tries to be selfish and capitalist, they're usually killed off in some horrifying way, sometimes realizing the error of their ways in their final moments. So the next time someone tries to tell you to invest in some precious metal because the dollar is going to collapse at any moment, or they tell you that international trade or the value of currency is some great mathematical mystery, at least now, you know better. So what do you think the currency in post-apocalyptia will be? Let me know down in the comments. And don't forget to manipulate the value of that subscribe button by clicking it. And in the meantime, follow me on Facebook and Twitter and join the conversation on the subreddit.